The following portion of Daytime Tri-Cities is sponsored by AFI, your financial North Star.
And that's right, this morning we are live here at AFI Advisors in Kingsport answering your questions for our Making Money Manageable. We are joined again by Peter Raber, president here at AFI Advisors. Thanks for having us out today.
Absolutely. This is my favorite part, is answering people's questions.
And people have a lot of questions and certainly a lot of information this morning. And now we want to get to a question about insurance policies. We have Steve from Rogersville who just had a baby. Congratulations, Steve. But he's trying to decide now between term and whole life insurance. And of course, that's a big decision there.
It's a huge decision, and we help a lot of people through the thought process of this decision. We're not insurance brokers, so we don't sell it. So I feel like we can give that objective look at it. Term life insurance for me is probably the way to go, because what you're looking at is replacing a source of income for some period of time. It tends to be a lot cheaper than whole life, because whole life you're building in an investment vehicle into it. And so what I tend to tell people is buy the term life insurance, invest the difference between term and whole life, and you'll come out ahead in the end. But what you're really trying to do is figure out how much do I need. So if you look at the cost of raising a child, I think we had said in a previous show, 250 some odd thousand to get you to 18, then you tack on college, you looking at $500,000 policy, you might be able to buy that for $300 to $400 a year. And kind of like your home insurance, you hope you never use it, but it's there in case something happens to you. Whole life, it's more about leaving a legacy for those who you love afterwards. It's more about trying to build those things in. There are situations where whole life makes sense, so that's why I always tell people to look at your numbers, walk through the options. There's starting to be things like long-term care riders where you can use your death benefit to pay for long-term care. And with long-term care insurance getting so expensive lately, there's situational uses for whole life. I'm a much bigger fan of term. I think that's going to get you where you need to go and allow your family that transition time period of you've got some cash to cover it. Whole life can also be a really good way of having a small policy to pay for your funeral expenses so your family doesn't have that burden.
So it's a process.
It's a process.
And everybody has their own individual
Right.
circumstances. Our next question is from Justin in Kingsport, and this is something I think a lot of us can relate to. My investments have declined since the end of the year. Will I be able to deduct those losses on my taxes? Tax time, of course, right around the corner.
Right. So anything that happens this year, we're looking at next tax season. So anything that happened last year, the same rules would apply. But you only get to count those losses if you actually sell them. And so the way capital gains tax works is anything you buy or sell, you add up all of that at the end of the year and say, well, how many gains do I have and how many losses do I have? If the gains outweigh, then you're paying taxes on those gains. If the losses outweigh, they wipe out your gains, and you can take an additional $3,000 off of your income. But that only happens if we sell it. So if we're still hanging on to it, you don't get any tax benefit from it. Okay. And so that a lot of times people will feel like, well, my investments were down $10,000 this year. I should, get a tax break.
Yeah.
Not always the case. You have to have sold it to make it happen.
So if it's still moving and taking part, then
yeah, because it always has the ability now to rebound.
Yeah.
And so you don't get the benefit just because it was down mid-year.
All right, got to wait till the end of the transaction. Yeah. And kind of tying into that, William from Kingsport says, bonds are supposed to be safe. Why have I lost money in my fixed income funds this year?
Bonds are that ballast in a portfolio. So if risk comes from equities and stocks going up and down, bonds are supposed to hold that ground, but they're not immune to losses. And so what's happened is interest rates have gone up. So the things that we own now have gone down in value. And the way I explain that to a lot of people is if I promise to pay you $3 on the $100 that you borrow from me, and then somebody else comes to you and says, well, I'll pay you $5 for that same $100. Well, my $100 isn't worth the same. This is not as good of an investment for you. So for you, that price fell because this price is better. And so it's all about evaluating what's happening. And so a lot of times when we see these big events that we've seen in the market, we've got interest rates rising, we've got what's going on in Russia, Ukraine, we have these dislocations. Bonds take time. They have to pay their coupons over the course of the year. So you may not have gotten all your interest in on those bonds either. And so let's say you get 5% for a year, you may have only gotten 1% so far. So it takes a little time for those things to value. But as interest rates go up, bond funds go down. They just won't go down as much as a stock fund will go down during a period of distress.
Certainly a lot of equations. We
Right.
can see why having that relationship with an advisor and being able to lay all your cards out,
Right.
everything makes a difference.
Right, and especially if you feel like something should do one thing and then it does something different. Because there's always the fine print of these things, of why they do what they do.
All right. Well, certainly some great information, Peter. Thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely.
If you would like to get in touch with them or you have a question, you can always reach out to them. You can call their office here in Colonial Heights, or you can check out their website, afiadvisors.com.
The preceding portion of Daytime Tri-Cities is sponsored by AFI, your financial North Star.